Hello and welcome back to another YouTube video. Today I'm going to be talking about Zac Top as it is really powerful. In the recent patch 12.23 it got buffed massively. The blobs plus just getting more damage in level ups has made Zac a really threatening top laner, and he can now solo kill you quite comfortably. So let's talk about it. I have recently made a Patreon, so it's going to be in the description now. If you like my content, please like and subscribe and continue on. So the runes are going to be as follows. You're going to run either Grasp or Conqueror. There's not really any other choice. You can possibly run Aftershock, but from what I've seen, Grasp and Conqueror are your main two keystones. So in the Grasp tree, you're going to run Demolish, you're going to run Second Wind, you're going to run Revitalize. Revitalize synergizing really well with your blobs. It's a really strong tool when you're healing as much as you are to have a healing amp within your kit. Triumph synergizes well when you're going with things like Spirits. You build a lot of health, so it will help when you're building a lot of health. You get more healing out of that health. Coup de grace, Last Stand is also really strong on Zac. Because you're low health throughout the fight a decent amount, you do a lot more damage when you're lower on health, so it makes for a really good rune choice. Tenacity is also an option. Running Tenacity on Zac allows him more freedom to do more damage, and with it not being tied into the mythics at the moment, well, the cool ones which he wants to build, it's pretty handy to have sometimes. So those are your choices. You either take Last Stand or Tenacity. Within your keystone, like your minor keystones, your minor runes, you're wanting to run CDR. You'll see this as a common trend on Zac, that CDR is by far his best and most valuable resource, even though he uses health a lot for his damage, for his sustain. CDR is really important for him because that's how he heals more. When you're casting more abilities, more blobs are created, thus healing more out of it. So you want to run CDR and then armor magic resist depending on lane matchup or jungle and lane dynamic, and then you would run health as it's his other really valuable stat. Zac also scales really well with AP, so that's why you'll see a couple AP items in a second. Yeah, the Conqueror tree follows fairly similar routes, except from it's more of a damage amp rather than a sustain through the laning phase kind of tree. Conqueror is pretty nice if you're playing a lot more aggro and you're going a bit more AP heavy in the items. So the items are as follows. You're gonna start the D-Shield. You're not gonna really start anything other than D-Shield on Zac. He's very tied to D-Shield. It gives him the sustain he needs throughout the laning phase. And it's just a nice amount of health to start the game off with as well. So it's all pretty nice for him. Second Wind, D-Shield gives him a pretty safe laning phase, and Revitalize synergizes well with that as well. Jack-Show is his core mythic at the moment. However, both Heartsteel and Radiant Virtue see a couple of a decent amount of games, and they look pretty good as well. So it wouldn't surprise me if that Zac is one of the few tanks at the moment who you can utilize a lot of the tank items, which is where a lot of his relative success comes from, being able to kind of switch his build. He can also go Sunfires. He's a really good Sunfires user. If you're into like AD jungle, AD top, Sunfires makes for a great first item, so definitely consider that. Radiant Virtue, it's a different option to Jack-Show. If you feel like you don't need Jack-Show in the game, but Jack-Show doesn't suit how you want to play, Radiant Virtue can make a great first item as well. Gives him more team kind of play as well, so that might be stronger in higher elo if your team is more focused around the item and playing around you. Darkseal, really important on Zac. Zac utilizes Darkseal really well. Lots of AP scalers within his kit make him a really good Darkseal user, so I'd recommend picking one up almost every single time on your first back. It's really strong. And then always get Lucidities. You can go Sorks on Zac, but Lucidities are by far his best boot. Sorks do have a good win rate, but you see less play on Sorks, so it's kind of hard to say whether it's win rate bias or whether it's actually good. So Lucidities are going to be your core boots at the moment. Demonic is your best second item. If you're going something like Jack-Show first into Demonics, it's a really strong duo. You can go Heartsteel into Demonics as well. You get a lot of AP out of that. Your W does a lot of percentage health damage when you have a bit of AP. All tying quite nicely. What you got to be careful on Zac though is that Heartsteel does not proc on your Q. So when you're pulling pulling two people to each other with your Q, you cannot proc a Heartsteel auto on that. That's something which kind of tripped me out in the first game, but once you get like the hang of it, that you have to auto them again afterwards, then yeah. The biggest problem with Zac and Heartsteel is the fact that it feels if it was kind of bad needing to auto weave as much as you do, even though auto weaving is good and I definitely recommend it, auto weaving on Zac is a lot harder because of the way you want to output his spells and you want to get that Q down as quick as possible. So be wary of that. Make sure you get the Heartsteel procs. You really need them during the game. It is a lot of your damage, a lot of your sustain if you're going this option. It scales a lot harder than Jack's show, which is kind of like the if you're taking a more scaling route. So it'd be better in low elo, definitely. Jack Heartsteel will definitely be better than Jack Show in low elo, but it's an option. Sunfires is a really strong item on him. Works quite well as a second option as well. Spirits, 4-mail, relatively similar win rates. Spirits, obviously for the healing, you get more healing out of his blobs. It's quite a nice magic resist sustain item. Or 4-mail if you're playing into a heal-based team or like a heal-based enemy team, you really need the anti-heal, or you just need the thorns if you're going something like Sunfire into 4-mail. You're running a lot of reflect damage off that, can be quite valuable. Plus 4-mail demonics is also a strong combo because the reflect damage does AP, synergizes as well with the demonics. Gargles. It will synergize well with spirits, so if you're going spirits, Gargles becomes a better item, a stronger incentive to buy that. You can go Fawn if you need a magic resist sustain, not magic resist, magic resist like I mean it almost plays like a sustain option where you're sustaining hits to rake up more magic resist, and it's pretty good. Also if enemy team has a lot of magic resist threats, something like Fawn works pretty well. Zac is a really nice tank because he has a lot of options in his items, whereas a lot of other champs can struggle with this. Zac kind of flourishes in this area at the moment. He can also go Anathemas. This is slightly off to the side here. He can go Anathemas. It's a really good option on Zac. Pretty strong. If there's like a single target and you need to be able to nullify them. And Randuin's into double crit. It's not a bad item. It's just kind of... It falls into the same category as like Radiant Virtue where it's too niche. So maybe Randuin's will see some love because even into the double crit it can feel worse than certain other options. But Zac doesn't have the ability... Well, it doesn't really want to go Frozen Heart because he doesn't have any mana. So, yeah. Flash Ignite will be your main duo in Keystones. Keystones in summoner spells. Ignite works really well in to kill lanes, like if you want to kill your opponent, if they're sustaining and you want the Ignite early so you can mitigate some of this healing. TP is another option. TP obviously scales higher with the elo you're in, but I think Ignite through and through is usually just stronger than TP. TP is a pretty mediocre summoner spell if you can't use it correctly, so I'd recommend Ignite most of the time. Your skill order will be W max into E max, and then Q and R. You max W for your damage, you keep hitting it into the wave so you want more damage of that, and then you max E for the range on it, gives you more engage potential, and then you'd max Q. Your bad matchups are Singed, has a pretty easy time of getting you out of the fight and keeping you kind of away from where you want to be. Plus, you can ground you during your E, which makes it really painful to try and E into Singed if he lands the W correctly. He can run around, do a lot of damage as well. He kind of does something similar to you, except from he does a bit more damage rather than as much disrupt. He's a very single target disrupt, you're a bit more of a multi-target disrupt. So be careful of Singed. Kled is another one. Kled has a really good time into a lot of tanks. He can into sustained champs, I should say, not tanks. Even though he does play well into a lot of tanks because he can pull them out of their cast abilities. Because tanks do tend to have like long cast timers, he can pull them out of them. Zac kind of falls into the category of he has big cast animations and he heals a lot, which makes Kled really strong into him. The Q can really cripple you as a champion. Plus, you don't have the damage to kill him quick enough in his dismount form, so he can usually remount. Gwen, Aatrox, Camille, Fiora will fall into a similar category of they're sustained fighters who either do true percent or just a lot of damage, which can just out-duel you and then use you almost to sustain themselves back up to full health. Two of them go Divine Sunder into you. Divine Sunder feels really bad when you're playing tank at the moment, and Gwen of course does a lot of magic and true damage through her Q. Gwen also would use you to sustain through all of this damage. So that's my kind of a summary of Zac. He's really strong at the moment. I wouldn't be surprised if he got nerfed. I hope he doesn't, but he probably will. But if he doesn't get nerfed, play him. He's really strong, and definitely put some time into playing Zac. Zac usually appears in the meta quite often, so are definitely considering worth picking up. So thank you guys for watching. I will see you in the next one. Check out the Patreon.